So I finally watched Quiet on Set, the documentary that explores the abuse that was going on behind the scenes at Nickelodeon, and I'm going to be talking about it. So I just want to give a parental warning because this will touch on some disturbing topics.
'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the StudioJake vidcast. This is my show where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to support me, Jacob Berry, you can at my locals community. The link is in the description. So I waited to talk about Quiet on Set because I wanted to watch all the episodes. They were being released, weekly, and I wanted to be able to watch all of them, including the follow up, kind of the after the show episode that they did with Soledad O'Brien, and break it down. The documentary, which I have a review for on my website, StudioJakeMedia.com, but that review really talks more about the technical aspects of it and whatnot. That's usually what I do. But I just wanted to say on a personal level how this affected me. I'm a millennial. I used to be ashamed of that fact, but now I'm very proud to be a millennial. We grew up in the golden age of children's television, like what was on Nickelodeon or the Disney Channel, ABC. We had Saturday morning cartoons. And it was very impactful for me to watch this documentary about one specific channel, Nickelodeon, where things were going on behind the scenes that I had no idea of. I had no conception of. I was a kid. Now, I didn't have cable. My family, we we just watched local television. I would be able to watch Disney because UPN 21, as the channel was called, and ABC would rerun stuff that aired on the Disney Channel. So we could watch Even Stevens and the Lizzie McGuire show and whatnot from the Disney Channel. Now, Nickelodeon, they didn't have that equivalent. And so we would watch that when we'd go visit my grandparents or friends who did have a cable system or satellite dish. And we watched all that, The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh. Around the time when Drake and Josh was airing, I was kind of in. This was me as a teen. I was thinking I'm kind of too old for that stuff, which is kind of funny because I was still watching, stuff like Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated shows, Justice League Unlimited, stuff like that. But sort of those teeny bopper tween shows I was getting too old to watch, even though, I still loved animation. But I kind of knew that there was trouble in Nickelodeon because of things like Brian Peck, who is talked about in this documentary. Now, I didn't know the full circle of what was going on with Brian Peck. I knew his name from another documentary, which did not get the same publicity that Quiet on Set is getting, which is called An Open Secret, which I also reviewed that documentary the year it came out. I should say when it was widely released. I did a review on that back in 2015. And I was stunned because Brian Peck was someone who was very recognizable. He was known to us who watched Nickelodeon as Pickle Boy. He would always be walking around with a plate of pickles. He would appear at the Kids' Choice Awards. He would appear on Double Dare. All of these different shows, you would always see him in the background. So I recognized his face. It wasn't until I saw An Open Secret that I knew the stuff about him, about how he was a horrible abuser, he was a monster, and, tying it back to Quiet on Set, hearing Drake Bell talk about this. Yes, I know Drake Bell has had some personal issues and dealing with his own, accusations and whatnot. However, I just wanted to mention at the time of watching Drake and Josh and then later Ultimate Spider-Man, didn't know a lot about this. And I have my own thoughts about the Drake Bell stuff, which I share on a video when I covered it back then. But for this sake, I just want to talk about how heartbreaking it was to listen to Drake Bell, this actor that I looked up to. I thought he was cool when I was growing up. I really liked Drake and Josh. I thought it was hilarious. And to hear him relate what he went through with Brian Peck was really hard to listen to, and not just him. I remember when Janet McCurdy came out and talked about it, hearing from cast members from all that and just the horrible things they went through. As a kid, you don't have a conception for that. You don't know that's going on behind the scenes. And this is before the internet. So people weren't tweeting about it or anything. In fact, Amanda Bynes, she had a non-verified Twitter account, and she was warning people about this as soon as Twitter was a thing, but everyone just thought she was crazy. Well, maybe there was a reason she kind of cracked, you know? There are allegations about her relationship with Dan Schneider. He actually tried to get her emancipated from her parents so he could have full control over her career. Very disturbing stuff. And, Drake Bell recently released this song called I Kind of Relate, which I will have a review about that as well coming out very soon. And it's very sad because he talks about how, because of his own mistakes, people didn't want to hear what he was going to. So he is moving to Mexico. He speaks fluent Spanish. He sings in Spanish, and he has a big fan base there. And he's decided to move there. And he comes back to the States to do concerts. And, it's really sad because he said no one wanted to hear. Drake Bell, if you are on YouTube and you come across this video, I want you to know that there are people who did hear you and who listen and who think it matters what you have to say. If you come to Phoenix, and perform, I'd love to hear you. Now, I actually did get to meet Drake Bell very briefly at a Comic-Con. He came, he was doing a Ultimate Spider-Man interview, and he also talked about Drake and Josh, and I got to ask him a question. I talk about this at the video in the article I wrote about, again, on my website, StudioJakeMedia.com. And I asked him, would you like to go back to Drake and Josh or Ultimate Spider-Man? And he, in a very long answer, basically said Drake and Josh. And it's such a shame, too, because with everything that happened, drama between him and Josh Peck. And with this whole thing, hearing the other cast members discuss this about how Nickelodeon not hired, they didn't just hire one pedophile that kind of slipped through the cracks. They hired two, and how this other guy, targeted young girls who weren't even teenagers, and how Brian Peck targeted Drake Bell, and some of the other boys made accusations that he kind of got handsy with them, but it never escalated. And also with the accusation with Dan Snyder. Now, what's interesting was this documentary kind of avoided going down the darker road with Dan Schneider. They kind of hinted at it, but they didn't outright accuse him of anything. With the Soledad O'Brien, the final episode, she interviews Drake, and they talk about how in the courtroom, Brian Peck, at his sentencing hearing, it was loaded with people like Will Friedle, Ryder Strong, James Marsden, and other Hollywood elite, and how none of them have reached out to apologize to him. See, this is why when people like Jacob, why are you so hard on Hollywood? Why do you call people like James Gunn a perv or Bryan Singer a perv? This is why. Brian Peck pled guilty because he confessed, and there was loads of evidence about the horrible, horrific things he had done to Drake Bell. But Hollywood elite still turned out against him, against Drake Bell. They still turned out for him. Now, to their credit, Will Friedle and Ryder Strong, they said they didn't know. Because again, the court documents were sealed for a while because Drake Bell was a minor, and they apologized to him. He said he accepted their. But now, in the Soledad O'Brien interview, he said that because originally they kind of apologized to him on a podcast, not to him directly. Later, he said that a few of them had reached out and he has forgiven them, and because they apologized to him directly. Great. But this is why you have to be so careful. Parents who are wanting their kids to get into show business, keep an eye out, because that's what happens with a lot of these kids is the parents, they want to stay quiet because they don't want to be perceived as troublemakers, because that could cost their kids this career that they desire so much. And don't. If all of you speak up, if all of you speak up, then they can't fire all of you because then they don't have programs. What is really sad is Brian Peck, when he got out of prison, Disney hired him. And he went on to work with The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, which starred Cole Sprouse, who has made allegations that he was abused by a man who worked on The Sweet Life. Now, Disney, when they were kind of shamed into firing, they claimed they didn't know. They should have done their due diligence, but this is Hollywood. Places like SAG or the WGA or the Directors Guild, they protect these predators. Don't forget, this is the same body that gave an Academy Award to a guy who had committed all kinds of unspeakable acts on a teenager, Roman Polanski. He did all kinds of terrible things to this girl. Now, she has chosen to forgive him, and that is her prerogative, like it is Drake Bell's. He should not have even been nominated. It was disgusting. And to watch Meryl Streep, who gets on her high horse, and she's in all of these films where she's talking about how, we need to do this, or I don't like this politician, or I hate this person, and you need to do this because I'm. And then she gets up and applauds him. She calls Harvey Weinstein God. Spare me. Meryl Streep is a very talented actress, but she is a disgusting human being defending predators and cheering for them and praising them. You will not convince me that people didn't know about Harvey Weinstein. You will not convince me that Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Quentin Tarantino didn't know. I call on X, I call them the Harvey Weinstein bros. They were always photographed with him laughing, having a good old time. Oh, we're going to pat your back because he's one of the good old boys of Hollywood. It's disgusting. That's why I do not give these entertainment industry people the benefit of the doubt. And listen, there are exceptions. I'm not saying that. Denzel Washington, Tyler Perry, Matthew Marsden, Christopher Nolan. Man, it's bad when you don't remember Dennis Quaid, Mark Wahlberg. There are good people who exist in Hollywood. I'm not saying that, but the industry doesn't protect those people. It protects the people who are corrupt, who are rotten, who have nothing but bad things to say and misery to spread. There needs to be more reforms in how Hollywood deals with child actors, what to do with those producers who commit these terrible crimes. And you all know my stance when it comes to how to deal with child predators. A short drop and a sudden stop. Yeah, I said it. I'm not taking it back either. Hollywood has this corruption problem, and it goes over and over again. Now, I wasn't allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy when I was a kid. My parents thought it was too far. It encroached too much on sort of that gross out humor. Watching it, I did watch a few episodes later as an adult. Glad I stuck to Hey Arnold and Doug. But even look at that guy. That guy is a convicted offender, and he lost Ren and Stimpy eventually. I think another studio bought the rights to it from him or something like that. But the fact that he was protected for so long by the Hollywood elites, by the industry, it's disgusting to me. And it's even worse in Europe, because in a lot of the European countries, the age of consent is way lower than it is in the United States, which now there are states in the United States that want to lower the age of consent just to please these elites, these disgusting, evil elites. And it's not just Hollywood. It's in politics. It's in journalism. It's all over the board. It's in big business. That's why I think there needs to be bigger and better laws and harsher sentencing for these criminals, because that is the only way we will stop it. And we need to shame and hold Hollywood accountable when predators like this slip through the cracks. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. The best way to deal with these pervs, short drop and a sudden stop.
Cause I've been living life right like I could just die